this season in the SEC is going to be a bloodbath.
Yep, on Saturday, the number 23 ranked Ole Miss Rebels began the gauntlet that is the Southeastern Conference. Against one-loss Georgia. To a sold-out pavilion we go, the Rebs trying to bounce back after a 17-point beatdown by Memphis last week. Sean Padula says, oh yeah, we've reflected and rejuvenated. Ice in his veins for three, but that ice turned straight cold. The Rebs grabbing just one bucket in nearly 4 minutes, and the Bulldogs capitalizing. They take a 28-26 lead at the half, with both teams shooting under 35%. But the Rebs start to get hot, opening the first 9 minutes of the second half with an 18-4 burst to build a 44-32 lead. And that lead, they would never give up. After the game, Chris Beard was proud of his team's tenacity, it's a tough word, Rachel, and resiliency.
It felt good because that's the game plan. You know, just have some discipline. Like, we did what we said we were going to do. Was it perfect? No. But the second half was pretty clean basketball. I mean, you beat them by 14 in the second half. You scored 37. We were holding the ball late, so we could have got to a 40, 42-point half. You know, lots of good things in that second half. And at the top of the list, I just thought we competed and we fought. We didn't have any, like, special performances tonight. I complimented Break and Matt, but that's not their A-plus game. We just played really hard as a team, and we played some great defense tonight. No denying that.
Yeah, Georgia coming into the game only had one loss. They're a top 20 defensive team. They're a top 50 offensive team. They have one of the best players in college basketball in Asa Newell. This game was definitely, I guess you could say, was a little bit of a trap game for Ole Miss. This is no walk in the park. No game is. All of these games remaining are pretty much all quad one, with a handful of quad two games remaining in the SEC. And Ole Miss, Georgia is no exception. Georgia really bullied them in the first half. And that's what I was kind of looking out for, and that's what I asked Chris Beard and Brakefield after the game was, you know, y'all got bullied last week. Do you think you gained back some toughness? And if it wasn't for the second half, I think you're sitting there, you're Chris Beard, he talked about, you know, why would we even practice if we're not going to enact it on game day? Mm-hmm. And they were able to in the second half. But if you don't, you're sitting there, you're a beaten down team heading into a tough game against Arkansas, at Arkansas in the next game. But that second half nullified it. I think that second half could be a season-changing half because of what they did, breaking out to that run. But it wasn't just that. It was, you know, you break out to that run, Georgia still has to get possessions, right? You're stopping Georgia a lot. Georgia in the first half had 16 points in the paint, and it was easy buckets. And a lot of it wasn't, you know, going through someone's chest. A lot of it was defensive miscommunication in ways. So they weren't always getting bullied in the paint. They had 16 points in the paint in the first half, 8 in the second half, and they were all tough buckets. There was no easy buckets for Georgia pretty much in the second half. Ole Miss really cut down on the turnovers, especially in the final 10 minutes of the game. And, yeah, I think that it's something that they can be proud of. I don't know if you have anything else on that, but there are some negatives about the game as well. You know, Sean Padula didn't have a great game. He started out the game hitting 2 hard threes, you know, one of them that you saw there, really pittered off throughout the game. He hit a shot at the end. Matthew Morrell hit a shot at the beginning and then really just continued to get to the free throw line a couple of times. Almost half of his points came from the free throw line. He hit a big three, and then he hit a fadeaway towards the end of the game. But for the most part, it was the Brakefield show, and that was really good for him. You know, I didn't know he could shoot the three like that. He had 3 big threes. But
the most he's ever had in a game for him.
Yeah, no, it was definitely big. I mean, Georgia were not preparing for him to shoot threes. So without that performance, you may be sitting there with not a good loss to Georgia, but overall pretty positive for the Rebels.
Yeah, I think obviously it's a good win. It's a needed win because when you look at the SEC, it's a gauntlet, right? We say that every week. The SEC has 6 of the top 10 in the current AP top 25. Just wild stats. Only 4 teams in that top 10 are not in the SEC. So every win right now in the SEC is important, especially I think at home. That's when you really need to capitalize on that fan engagement. I heard Coach Beard say after the game, he really felt like the fans had an impact on that game and helped move them forward. I expected them to come out and be more dominant. I think after losing by 17 to Memphis, an in-state rival, basically an in-state rival, a team that...
right on the edge.
Yeah, right there. A team that they have had this rivalry with for a long time, that they beat last year. Their former player, Musa Sisse, is over at Memphis. They pretty well get embarrassed, I think it's fair to say, by 17 points. And then to come out, I thought they would really bounce back from that and come out with a fire in their belly to be like, what you saw last week against Memphis isn't us. We are a much better team than that. And obviously, the quality of competition, Georgia's a great team too. It's not like they're playing a quad 4 team yesterday. It was or a couple of days ago. It was a great team in Georgia, like you said, a one-loss team. So it was never going to be super easy for them, but I expected to see more from them. In the end, though, the stats are still pretty impressive. They held the Bulldogs to 11.1% from beyond the arc and 29% from the field shooting as a whole. And that's a team that usually shoots over 50% from the field.
They're a good shooting team, for sure.
So for Ole Miss to be able to limit them in that regard, I thought was really impressive. You mentioned both Brakefield and Matt Morrell. I thought really great performances from them and performances that were needed. They're two of the veterans on that team. They chose to stay at Ole Miss to do something this year. And it kind of felt like they were out there being like, no, we're not going to lose this at home. Like, we need to make sure that this gets a win because they stayed for a reason. And if they go and lose to Georgia, like, why did I choose to stay here? What are we doing? And so I thought it was good to see them kind of stand up and show that leadership amongst the team. You mentioned Matt. Obviously, he had that early shot, you said, and then kind of went a little bit slow and soft. I think it's interesting with him right now. I think everyone expected him to bring more this year, but obviously he was out a couple weeks with a lower body injury. Chris Beard said after the game that he's now got full minutes he's allowed, so they're not kind of holding him back at all. They're just going to let him play, and he's still doing some work in the gym to kind of get back up to full fitness. But I think this is a game, 15 points from him, 3 assists, 11th all-time now in Ole Miss scoring. That's what he surpassed on the weekend. I think this is maybe a building game for him, maybe slowly getting back to the Matt Morrell we know and have come to love, and I think we'll hopefully see more of that moving forward as we get into more conference play.
Yeah, and I said 2 weeks ago that I think Matt Morrell needs to average around 18 points per game, and I think we saw that. You know, if he's around that 18 to 20 clip in this game, it's not really in the first half. If he can get like 9 points or 8 points, Ole Miss are able to create a little bit of a cushion. This is a different game. He just wasn't hitting his shots, and something may be bothering him in his lower body still. But at the same time, you know, his teammates in this game weren't really helping him out besides Brakefield. Juju Murray, this is the first game he hasn't started at point guard. He came off the bench. He was 1 of 7 with 3 points. He did not have a great game. Malik Dia as well had a decent game with 7 points and 7 rebounds, but defensively, there were a lot of times where Morrell had to slide to help him out. Morrell's having to overwork himself on the defensive end too. And I want to talk about Malik for a second because keep in mind, Ole Miss don't have a true center that plays on this team.
Right.
You know, they really don't. And Georgia, at the same time, don't have a dominant center, but they dominated them inside the paint with rebounds and getting points in the paint in the first half especially, and through parts of the second half too. I think that's concerning when you have players like Janai Broome with Auburn who looks like he's going to win the Wooden Award. Mississippi State have a couple guys. So do Kentucky and so do Arkansas who really can dominate inside the paint. Malik Dia is just not a big guy. You know, 7 rebounds is a good stat line, but there were at times where he was just making mistakes defensively. He was making mistakes offensively. And Chris Beard was toughest on him for sure. And during the Memphis game, I don't know if you remember this, Memphis fans were chirping Dia. And then all of a sudden he explodes, and I think he scored 3 out of the next 5 baskets for Ole Miss. Similar thing happened in this game where a Georgia player was chirping him a little bit, and then he ended up getting that putback dunk that you saw. He talks so much and then was just so electric. Maybe he needs something like that. I don't know.
Maybe they need to have someone on their bench just being like, just continuously chirping him.
Yeah,
Get it under his skin.
Maybe they do need something like that. But I think the coaching staff realizes it because Beard is saying stuff to him. You know, where he'll be like, "What are you doing?" At one point, you know, he was like, do you want to be on the court or do you want to be on the bench? And, you know, maybe that didn't motivate him the right way, but Beard's a great motivator. He'll figure it out. Something else they did I thought was interesting, I haven't seen outside the high school level, they were counting passes in the second half. I don't know, that sounds like a UTEP basketball thing, so maybe you've seen that before. That's a Conference USA move. But they were counting.
Shots fired there.
Oh, no, it's definitely back to the basics, you know? Like,
hey, I'll have you know UTEP basketball are 2-0 in conference play right now. Thank you very much.
Oh, all right, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of 2 teams. The other team, NMSU, also a team I covered. So.
Cool.
Battle of I-10 coming up this weekend if anyone wants to tune in.
Will you let me finish?
You started. You're throwing shots
So I want
already.
to hear more about UTEP and NMSU. Yeah, they were counting passes. So it was 1, 2. In the first half, they weren't doing that at all.
Did you struggle to keep up?
Once it got past 4, it was like, yeah, when you have that Memphis high school education, yeah.
You said it, not me.
Well, you basically did. I know how you feel about it. Once they got past about 5, it was like, oh gosh, yeah. They were moving the ball a lot better in the second half. You completely derailed my point. You were the one that derailed it there. That was a good point I was making. They were counting passes, moving the ball better.
Know, yeah.
Oh, move on to the next thing.
Well,
it's me.
Ole Miss are also moving on. They're back in action on Wednesday when they take on Arkansas, looking to move to 2-0 on the season.
At Arkansas.